Hello, my name is Adam Winrich, and here's a quick video about my design for a nylon bullock whip. Shout out to Thane Hardy in Chapel Hill, who asked about how I go about building one. And also shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. Thanks so much for your support. If you'd like to support my Patreon channel for as little as $1 a month, I'll put a link to it in the description. All right, so now more about the bullock whip. Give the audio on my camera a second to get used to that loud sound. So a couple general things about this. First, the handle I use is bamboo. Some people like a lot of flex in the handle. I myself don't like a lot of flex. I prefer a lighter handle with no flex. So this is just bamboo from my friend Rush Pearson's place in Todd Mission, Texas. And then the thong is 10 foot long, and it's based on a paracord stock whip that I got from an old rodeo performer and whip maker named Gordy Peer in Okeechobee, Florida. And so I'm not going to show you detailed instructions on how to braid. I'm going to describe to you the method of how I make it, and then you can take those notes and then apply that with Nick Schrader's video on how to make a 550 paracord stock whip. And with those two things, you should be able to put together a working bullock whip. So first, some things I noticed when I was copying Gordy's whip, which worked excellent as a bullock whip, but I eventually wore it out and had to retire it, is that, so it's 10 foot long, but the design was kind of divided into thirds. So the first third of the whip, or first 40 inches, had almost no taper to it. And then there's a lot of taper in the next 40 inches. And then the last 40 inches looked like it was just braided over some loose paracord strands, like the belly had already ended, and then the end with the twist. So I think that helps if you think of it in thirds. So now let me get my little note sheet out so I can try to describe to you the lengths. So first, the core in the whip is going to be, first you cut 4 strands of ungutted paracord. That's going to be the core. So since I said there's no taper for the first 40 inches, so you're going to cut 1 strand 40 inches, 1 strand 52 inches, 1 strand 64 inches, and another strand 76 inches. And so that length from like 40 to 76 inches, that'll provide part of the taper for your core. And then also, Gordy's whip did have a little bit of a swell to it, so I cut a 5th piece of paracord that's only 10 inches long, and I braid the belly down 10 inches, and then I'll insert that extra 5th piece of paracord that's 10 inches long and then braid over that. So a little bit of a swell right here. So I described the core. It's 5 core strands in total. Now with the belly, what I'm going to do is, you can kind of see it right here. The belly actually forms the keeper. So you're going to cut your belly strands and then braid a 5-strand flat braid after you've doubled over the strands. Braid that braid in the middle, and then you'll double them over and start doing a 10-strand round braid. Again, braid 10 inches, insert your 5th strand for the core. And then once I've braided past that 40-inch strand, then I'm going to start dropping strands in the belly. So let's see, from the 40-inch to 52-inch mark on the belly, I'm going to first drop from 10 to 9 inches, or from 10 plat to 9 plat, and then 9 plat to 8 plat. So I'm braiding 8 plat basically over the end of the 52-inch core strand, and then in that next little gap between 52 inches and 64 inches, I'm going to drop from 8 to 7, and then 7 to 6, and then finally in the sort of little space between 64 inches and 76 inches, I'm going to drop from 6 to 5, and then 5 to 4. So by the time I'm at the end of the 76-inch long core strand, I'm going to be down to 4 plat. Then I'll braid just another 4 inches of 4 plat. So then my whole braided belly is 80 inches. And then I'll sort of tape that off and leave a few sort of trim strands hanging out to continue the taper on down. And then once you've done that, the rest of it's relatively simple. You're going to do a 12 plat overlay. So you're going to loop all of your overlay strands through that keeper that you braided, then start braiding 12 plat. And then I pretty much just braid on down until it looks like the strands are about to start getting crowded, and then I start dropping strands. So you can see I've braided a ways, almost half the length of the whip before I start dropping down to 11 and 10 plat. And then I'm going to want to be to 8 plat by the time I am on the sort of 4 plat very tail section of the belly. And then I'm going to keep braiding down to say 4 plat with 1 strand in the core, and I'm going to want that to end at 100 inches. And then I'm going to end the whip, or wait, let's see, no, here, the core ended here. I'm going to braid with the last little bit of the core strand from my drop strands. That'll be at 100 inches. And then this last little section right here is 20 inches long. So it's braided right here, but normally now I would do a 4-strand twist for 5 inches, and then drop out 1 strand, do a 3-strand twist for 5 inches, and then a 10-strand twist for 10 inches. And then with Gordy's whips, Gordy did the very classic Florida style of tying on a cracker, where it's just a scrap piece of paracord that they've basically ended the twist, just tied an overhand knot, and then you take a piece of paracord and tie 1 knot, a clove hitch on one side of your end knot, and then a little hitch on the other side of your end knot of the whip, and it's just a piece of paracord that's allowed to fray out. I don't just use the paracord for the cracker, I sort of use it as a fall and then tie on a separate cracker. So hopefully that's as clear as mud. That's basically my design for a 10-foot bullock whip. I use these in my shows a lot. And then of course the whole whip is waxed once it's done, dipped in paraffin wax. And then this particular one is also painted to try to keep it white. This whip could use a new paint job for sure. One other thing I'm going to mention, and I'm sure if you're this far in the video, you're wondering, Adam, how come you told us the core strand lengths, but you didn't tell us the strand lengths for the belly or for the overlay? Well, you're going to have to do your own calculations, and I kind of do that every time I build a whip. Sometimes I do keep notes, but my basic formula is this. I always calculate it's 1.8 times my desired finished length. So let's say this is a 10-foot whip. So I would multiply 10 times 1.8, so that gives me 18 feet. But of course, you heard me mention that in the belly and in the overlay, all the strands are doubled over, so I would have to double that measurement. So my 2 longest strands in the overlay of the whip are actually going to be 36 feet, and they get doubled over. So when I start braiding, I've got 18 feet of strands hanging out. So you can use that 1.8 times your final measurement, or 2 times 1.8 times your final measurement, to calculate all your other strand lengths, because I let you know about how far you're gonna have to braid each section of your belly before you start dropping strands. So you can use that method of calculation to figure out how long you should be cutting your belly strands. Well, my name is Adam Winrich. Thanks for watching. Again, shout out to all my supporters on Patreon. I'll finish out with a little more cracking with the bullock whip.